So Bhagavan described the psychological factors and the reasons why Arjuna should not quit. He has to continue his duty. And now, before he introduces Karma Yoga, he gives a little bit of praise or benefit of Karma Yoga. Yesterday we saw the verse which spoke about doing work for the sake of work, which was verse number 38. Sukha dukhe samay kritva labha labho jaya jaya. Meaning, be equanimous towards the results. Not that because of a certain result I put more effort, because I get a certain result I put less effort. Let the result not determine the enthusiasm of the work. Work for the sake of work. That joy of work itself is the fulfillment, is the reward. Naivam papam vapsasi. Then the mind will not be disturbed. This part of the Gita, which we call as Karma Yoga, is also called Buddhi Yoga. Because though we say it is a path of action, it is not just externally the action. Difference between karma and karma yoga is the difference in the understanding and the attitude. So merely when I do work, that is karma. But the work which I do with dedication, that is called karma yoga, which unites me with my potential, which helps me to invoke the unmanifest potential by holding on to a selfless, high, noble ideal. And where there is the sense of surrender, that action is called as karma yoga. Simply if I work, that doesn't make it karma yoga. That is only karma. Well, many people use that expression, Swamiji, I come to satsang, that my husband is a real karma yoga. He doesn't come to satsang, but he lives it. So what does he do? He works 18 hours a day. Just because he works 18 hours a day doesn't make him a karma yogi. He is a karmi who does action. If that work is dedicated work, then it is karma yoga, where the self-importance reduces, where the cause is more important to me. I am more in tune with the cause. Not that the result, when it comes, one feels that, I did it and the ego gets boosted. There may be a joy of achievement, no doubt, but deep inside one knows that I am only a tool, I am only an instrument. So that humility remains. Then that attitude is called as karma yoga. So now here, before he explains exactly what is karma yoga and how to act, a little bit of praise of karma yoga, because when some benefit is shown and when it is praised, then the mind gets more interested to do it. So here he says that in verse number 40, he says that na iha abhikrama nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate. In the earlier days of Vedic times, there were lots of rituals which were being performed, and karma kanda portion is a very elaborate portion in the Veda to fulfill one's desires. Now, when a ritual is done, there are specific rules and regulations about it, which are to discipline the mind and also to bring in the right conditions necessary to get a particular result. So, if a ritual is begun and it is left in between, that is not appropriate. When a ritual is taken up, one should finish it. So that is called as abhikrama nasha. Abhikrama nasha means you begin and you leave it half, then you don't get a result. And pratyavaya dosha meaning if you don't do it properly, there can be negative karma, negative results which one may get. Or if you forget to do it, what is your duty and you forget to do it, error of omission, then also there will be negative result for it. Like our antibiotics course, we are supposed to do for that much time, 5 days. And you don't complete it, you have begun it and you don't complete it, you forget, then there will be a relapse. So in karma, these two are very big difficulties. One is you take it up and you leave it half, you don't get the result appropriately. Second, you do it in a wrong way or you forget about it. That also gives a negative result. So he says that in Karma Yoga, that does not apply. To whatever extent you can be selfless, to that much extent you will get the benefit. And suppose you forget to be selfless by habit. There is no negative karma that you get because you did not become selfless, now you suffer this consequences. So he says there is no such dosha. And even a little bit, this third quarter is a very nice one. It says, Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhaya. Even a little bit of karma yoga you practice, you will be free from great amounts of agitation, fear, stress, even a little bit. So to begin with, to be selfless in all aspects of life looks very difficult. And if one says that, so I will remain selfish only, then one continues to remain in the shell, to suffer. So then whichever place I have love, maybe in a relationship or maybe in my work, maybe towards my country, wherever I have love, where I can sublimate my ego, there I should start. And he says, even a little bit of it you practice, you experience so much of unburdening, so much of relief. There is no pressure that, I have to prove myself. That is not there. Because you love the work, you keep doing it. And you do it for a higher purpose, then all the more better. So the idea here is this, that this is one benefit of Karma Yoga, that a person who practices Karma Yoga will not have to go through the negative results of karma, whether it is done or not done or done in a halfway. None of this will affect that person. And even a little bit a person practices, one is free from a lot of agitations. Now, two types of pictures are painted. One is of a person who is full of desires, who does not have strong determination. Single pointedness is not there. Another is a person who is single pointed. So now he comes to this description where those who are not following Karma Yoga, those who live only for themselves, those who live harboring a lot of selfish desires, what is the result? What happens to them? So this portion from verse number 41 onwards till 44, these 4 verses, Bhagavan speaks about this. And this is to make us aware of the contrast, that a selfish life with so much of pressure and a life of selflessness, what is the difference? So let's read. Verse number 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha kuru nandana bahushakha hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So vyavasayatmika buddhi, the buddhi which is single pointed, ekeha kuru nandana, it has determination, it has single pointedness. That buddhi which is determined to achieve an ideal, where one ideal is taken up and one puts oneself fully, heart and soul into it. That ideal becomes more important than the individual. And that determination to live up to that ideal, single pointed focus on that ideal, that is the quality of a Karma Yoga. The second line says, Bahushaka Yanantascha, Buddhayo Avyavasayana. In contrast are those people who do not have that resolute determination. They do not have an ideal. And their mind is dissipated into many, many desires. Bahushaka. Anantascha. How many desires? Endless desires. Eat this, go there, do this, become that, achieve this. So many desires. So when desires are so many, see, the secret of the mind's success is the lesser the number of thoughts, stronger the mind. In such a mind, whatever sankalpa comes, one sustains and one achieves. Single pointedness of the mind is called chitta ekagrata. If ekagrata is there, one generally thinks ekagrata or concentration is only as far as, let us say, remembering and reproducing is concerned. But it is not so. Concentration is a very powerful quality of the mind. And one has to cultivate that faculty. Take up one thing and be fully focused on that, and do not entertain contrary thoughts. The reason why we struggle so much to achieve what we want is because we ourselves entertain contrary thoughts. If not contrary thoughts, thoughts of doubt. And why do they come? Because we are anxious about the result. So even if I say I want this particular result and I am going to work hard for it and I am putting my best efforts for it, one part of the mind always is anxious. I don't know whether I will get. What if I don't get? What will happen if I don't get? So many people are trying, but I don't know whether I have a chance. The mind keeps on doubting. I don't think I can do it. Maybe next time. Mind keeps doubting. So the one part of the mind drains away the energy because I am so attached to the result that I have to have it. And now that pressure is there on the mind. One result can create that. Imagine so many desires one has. Each of them, how much energy of the mind it will be draining up. So he says that Bahushakha yananta ascha buddhayo avyavasayana. One is not to entertain contrary thought. I'll give you a simple example. That snooze button is there on the alarm. Is a classic example of that contrary thought. If I say that I will get up at 6 o'clock, why do I need a snooze button? I get up also at 6 o'clock. Then I say 10 more minutes. Press the snooze. Not required. Get up at 6 means get up at 6. Oh, got up now. But the mind will entertain. So, like that, many times one entertains contrary thoughts. What one wills strongly with single pointed focus and resolute determination, one will achieve. One must have that confidence and that faith in one's own mind power. But everything in this world is mind power. All great achievements of people, if you see, single pointedly they would have worked at it. Even if obstacles come, difficulties come, they will work single pointedly and keep moving towards it. They don't harbor doubt. Doubt, disbelief, and contrary thoughts. These are three drainers of mental energy. Doubting in one's own capacity, doubting in the wisdom of the Lord. The moment I start doubting, one becomes very tentative. Should I do, should I not do? Mind becomes dissipated. Some people have disbelief. They are firmly convinced that they can't achieve it. How will they achieve? Moksha is one example. How many of us are actually convinced that we can attain moksha in this life? Majority postpone it for future. ये जन्म में नहीं होगा स्वामी जी. Anyway, we believe in rebirth. अगले जन्म. This life is very difficult to get moksha. So the fundamental basis only is disbelief. नहीं होगा. तो नहीं होगा. So नहीं होगा. If the mind says no, होगा, then होगा. It depends on the mind. And we think that these are all new age philosophies. You see the movie Secret or read the book, it will say, if you think you can, you can. Wow. Thousands of years back the Rishis already said it. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. It is your mind. Over. Single pointed determination. So one is doubt, one is disbelief. And third is contrary thought. I want moksha, but I am continuously indulging in the world outside. How that is possible to attain? I want peace of mind. And I do things where I compromise, I go through all kinds of trouble, and I get myself agitated. want happiness, and then I become a slave to all kinds of sense objects and pleasures and everything. Contrary. So the moment there is contrary thinking, mind gets dissipated. So he says, Buddhayo avyavasayam. Such people are called avyavasayatmika buddhi. Their mind is not strong enough. Their mind is divided, dissipated, weak mind. So he says that people who are resolute, Vivekananda said that, take up one ideal and live that ideal, breathe that ideal, become one with that ideal, and you will see that you will be able to achieve. And he lived like that. No contrary thoughts, no doubt in his mind. He roamed about in this country for 8 years, 6 years, 1886 to 1893, 7 years. Nobody bothered about him. Nobody knew only who is this Vivekananda. He met a few people touring across the country. He had such a great plan to revive the culture of this country. One man. 7 years' time is a long time to put off all the fire and enthusiasm that is there in an individual. And especially if you keep getting discouraged, then very easy it is. So many people told him. If you read his books, Letters of Vivekananda, in one of the letters he writes that in India, young people are nobody. He writes that the boys are nobody, because he was hardly 21, 22 that time. He says, boys are nobody. Nobody will listen to you. You have a grand plan of reviving the whole culture and inspiring the countrymen and waking them up and all that. He said, nobody bothers. You have to attain a certain, certain age. Then they may listen to you, especially when you talk about spiritual matters. And especially if you talk about good aspects of India. The system was such that we have been taught to criticize our own selves, look down upon our own culture. So whatever is foreign is superior, whatever is Indian is inferior. Now he wanted to break that mindset. And when he started talking about it, people did not encourage him also. And 7 years' time, and I don't know if you are aware, his sister committed suicide. Vivekananda's sister committed suicide because there was no money. Out of hunger and that desperation, she committed suicide. He was from an aristocratic family, only son. And when his father passed away, the family came into debts. And he had a very tough choice to make. On one hand, should I be with the family or should I dedicate myself to the country? And he asked Ramakrishna Paramahamsa that, please, you are able to speak to Mother Kali. Please tell her to just bless my family with some wealth and I can focus myself on this revival of the country and the culture. He said, I don't ask Kali for all these petty things. You can ask him. I will tell her to meet you on an appointed day. So on a particular Tuesday, he said, go and meet Mother Kali in the temple, she will give you darshan. So Vivekananda went all prepared. I am going to ask her, please bless my family with wealth, because I want to dedicate myself to the country and the culture. So he went. And Mother Kali came, gave the darshan. And when he had the darshan, he prayed that, oh Mother, bless me with the deepest of devotion and greatest of knowledge to serve my country. When he came back, he said, oh God, what did I ask? So again he requested Ramakrishna, please, once more, please help me. 3 times Ramakrishna did that. And all the 3 times he asked the same thing. And then when he came out, he made that statement. He said that what is achieved, nothing is achieved without sacrifice. What if a mother or a family has to suffer? Nothing is achieved without sacrifice. And such a person, just imagine what he would have felt for 7 years he went around this country. He would have felt that for this country did I sacrifice my family? But no such thought came into his head. Then 1893, he got that opportunity. He went abroad and spoke in the World Parliament of Religions. And do you know the date when he spoke? We don't know. That great son of India who sacrificed himself, his family, everything for the country. If Indians and India had any respect abroad, it started with Vivekananda. Because till then they continue to think that India is only a land of snake charmers. Even today some of them think. Some of them ask, do they have elephants on the road still? Because they think that we live in some medieval era where elephants and horses and bullocks are driving our cars. September 11, 1893, he spoke in the World Parliament of Religions. That September 11 date is very famous for Twin Tower attacks. But Vivekananda spoke, that is not famous. So that one person, that ideal that he had, that I have to do this, I am convinced that this is the knowledge which will awaken the masses. He worked at it single-pointed dedication was. How many obstacles came on his way? He went to World Parliament of Religions, he lost that paper and that entry ticket to go to World Parliament of Religions. He lost his luggage, everything gone. Now he doesn't know where to go in America. Such a vast country, alone there, does not know, no phones, no mobiles, nothing that kind. And what does he do? He is sitting happily in the goods train, chanting away some verses of Kathopanishad. No anxiety in his mind at all. Now what will happen? Very balanced, peaceful person. And of course he found one of the acquaintances in the ship and then he took him and then things happened. But the point here is that the mind which is determined and resolute will achieve anything. Against all odds, against all obstacles. That is one of the qualities of a Karma Yogi. Please remember, Karma Yogi does not mean that a person compromises with result. Because that is what one thinks. ठीक है, result आया तो ठीक, नहीं आया तो भी ठीक, अब हम क्या करें? It's not that kind of unenthusiastic, disinterested, half-hearted effort. No. Very resolute. One knows why that result has to be achieved. But there is no selfish interest in that. It is a higher purpose. And one works single-pointedly towards that higher purpose. That person is called as a Karma Yogi, who does not compromise on the result, but who does not get anxious about the result also. And that can happen only when the result or the goal that I want to achieve has a noble purpose or a higher purpose. If I have to achieve it for myself only, then to that extent there will be a lot of stress, worry, tension, anxiety. So here that's why he says that Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha kurunandana. Person who has strong determination and single-pointed focus. That is the quality of a Karma Yogi. Bahushakha yanantascha. Person who does not have that, mind will be dissipated in endless desires. And each desire can create many, many thoughts. Now imagine many desires, so many thoughts, the mind is so crowded.
Is it alright to sacrifice one's family for whatever you trying to do?
See, the question is that what is the altar of sacrifice? It is not a selfish goal that one is trying to achieve. Chanakya said that for the sake of a family, individual has to be sacrificed. For the sake of the state, family has to be sacrificed. For the sake of the country, state also can be sacrificed. And for the sake of the Atma, the self, everything can be sacrificed. So the higher the altar is, one has to lift oneself. Like an army person is sacrificing, being with his family and is guarding the borders. And that's why we are able to live peacefully and happily. So if the altar is a higher altar, it is called as a sacrifice, and that one has to do. That comes out of the passion. Because not to do that is also to go away from one's own duty. If I have that capacity, like in this case Arjun has that capacity, and he has to sacrifice his own family members in this war. As Bhagavan says that you don't do that, then that is a sin. So it depends on what is the altar, how high is that altar, what is the purpose of the sacrifice, all that. It is not escapism, please. Buddha also sacrificed. But when Siddhartha became Buddha, how many countless people, even today they are inspired and they are following that path. So it depends on what is the altar of sacrifice. Everybody has to achieve something or the other only through sacrifice. If any achievement has to be done, one has to sacrifice the lower pleasures. If I have to become a great sportsman, I have to sacrifice so many things. In every field, musician, sportsman, wherever it is. But the question is that, am I doing it for individual benefit or am I doing it for a higher purpose? That is the main difference. Right, so now coming back to this, here he says that what is the mindset of people who are deeply rooted in desire, fulfillment and selfishness. 42nd verse he says, Yami mam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschitaha Veda vadarata partha Nanyadastiti vadinaha. So he says, Yamimam pushpitam vacham. They speak very flowery words, sweet words. Ravadanti avipaschitaha. They will speak, but they are the unwise people. They may even quote the Vedas, Veda vadarata partha. Nanyadastiti vadinaha. They believe that there is nothing higher in this world except I, the individual. The individual is most important. Individual has to be successful. Individual has to be a great achiever. Individual has to be happy. Everything is only I. There is no higher altar, there is no greater purpose, there is no God. They may even misquote the Vedas and they will say that why are you living for a higher purpose, selfless ideal? Just enjoy. Life is so short. In that short life, khao, piyo or mauj karo. Who has seen next life? Who has seen that there is a God? Have you seen whether there is a higher entity? You don't know any of that. Just live by the senses. What is visible, just go by that. Don't bother about what is invisible. An interesting definition of a pashu in Sanskrit is, who is a pashu? Pashu means animal. But if you split that word, pashu, who is a pashu? Pashyati iti pashu. One who sees is an animal. Meaning one who believes only what he sees is an animal. Because animal does not have the capacity to think subtly, to think about the invisible, the unknown. So if I believe only what I see, I am living at the level of my senses. I am not utilizing my buddhi. And so he says here that these are the people who will even tempt you, who may even make you feel that you are a fool when you are trying to live selflessly. All people around you are so selfish. They are doing what they want to do. Why are you trying to live in a selfless way? You are going to be a big loser if you live in a selfless way. So live. There is nothing higher, there is no morality, there is no need of all this. And all this life after death and this Punarjanma and again karma to face that you have to come back. All that is not, it is just a cooked up theory, so don't bother about all that. So they will say all these. What will be their result? What will be the goal that they seek? Kamatmana swarga paraha janma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishvarya gatim prati. He says kamatmana. Their mind is captured by all desires. They cannot sit quietly for some time also. Swarga paraha. And what is their ultimate objective? In those times, people used to seek heavenly enjoyments. That is their goal. Right? Whatever we do should lead us to heaven finally, and there we will enjoy the realm of enjoyment, which only means a better standard of living. That's all. So one who thinks about that that is the ultimate purpose of life, that I must have a nice bungalow, I must have food, I must have drinks, I must have good bank balance, a good car, this, that is the main goal, and enjoy with all that. Kamatmana swarga paraha. Janma karma phala pradam. And even if I have to take birth again, it is only to enjoy the punya karma, all the benefits and all the merits that I have acquired. With that I will enjoy. Janma karma phala pradam. Kriya vishesha bahula. And they are so restless because their mind is filled with so many desires and thoughts. They cannot sit quietly for even little time. Kriya vishesha bahula. Always will be engaged only in action. This I have to do, this I have to do, that I have to do, become this, do that. Constantly. Even if one sits for meditation, the mind says, what a waste of time. Anyway, your mind is going to wander. So why are you trying to do this? Now you have 10 things to achieve. Meditation and all you will see much later. So it pushes the person out. So a person is not able to even sit quietly. The mind is disturbed with so many desires. And why is it disturbed? Bhogaishvarya gatim prati. Only the objective of all actions is bhoga and aishvarya. Enjoyment and fame. That's all. Again, Vivekananda said, knowledge is the goal of life, not pleasure. And you think about it, how much of our time goes in knowledge and how much of our time goes in pleasure seeking. What is the end objective of all that we do? Is a better, comfortable life. No? That's all. Nothing wrong with that, but can that be the goal? Swarga paraha. Para means the supreme goal is bhoga and aishwarya and swarga. Which means the vision is very limited. That what is the human potential and where is it being used? Only to enjoy and indulge. In spite of knowing the fact that as we fulfill desires, they don't get exhausted. What happens? New ones arise. Either the same one I want repetition or some new ones will arise. So even though one knows that, the entire orientation of the mind is towards bhoga and aishwarya. There is a big difference between extroverted pursuits and the spiritual path. That big difference is the extroverted pursuit is directed only towards pleasure seeking. That is the main goal of life. The spiritual pursuit is to attain knowledge, and the path for that is tyaga, to drop. Dropping desires is the way to happiness, not fulfilling desires. Fulfilling desires can give temporary pleasure. And the distance between me and my moksha is what? Is only desire. More desires I have, further I am away from moksha, from my own nature, from my own experience as peace. I am further away. What blocks me is only my desire. The moment I am able to drop those desires, there I am. Because the desires make the mind so disturbed, person can't quieten the mind, cannot know the self, will always be dependent on things, beings, situations outside for happiness. So the path of spirituality is this. Our equation in the mind is desire fulfillment is equal to happiness. And so we run behind fulfilling desires. Do you know the equation of happiness? Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda used to give us the definition, the equation of happiness. Happiness is equal to number of desires fulfilled by number of desires entertained. Simple equation. Happiness is equal to number of desires fulfilled by number of desires entertained. So suppose I have 100 desires and 70 of them get fulfilled. My happiness quotient is 70%. So what one tries to do is maximize the fulfillment of desires. So if 80 desires get fulfilled, 90 desires get fulfilled. That is our extroverted path. Path of introvertedness is reduce the denominator. You have only 60 desires and 50 of them get fulfilled. Happiness percentage is so high. And the chances are more of that getting fulfilled. Because lesser number of desires, the mind has more energy, easier it is to fulfill. More number of desires, mind is dissipated, very difficult to fulfill. Hence, if one follows that path, which is the path of dropping, drop the desires. Prioritize and drop. And if one keeps dropping that way, and the denominator becomes zero, then happiness is infinite. That's why the master said, Tyage naike amritatva manashuhu. By tyaga, you attain immortality, not by fulfilling desires. So this culture of ours is based on tyaga. Adhyatmic culture is based on tyaga. Bhautik culture is based on bhoga. And the results of both these are very different. Bhoga will lead to dissipation of the senses, energy, restlessness of the mind. Ultimately, victim of a desire, and one dies, and again one is born. And that goes on. And the result of tyaga is you drop. Even simple things, forget dropping desires which are, normal and natural. Even to begin with dropping desires which are harmful, that also one is not able to do. Because one is so addicted to it. Smoking, drinking, gambling, so many of these. One, it harms a person. Gossiping, negative thinking, anxiety, all these are addictions. Even to drop them, forget, suppose we say, drop the desire for enjoyment, okay, difficult. Drop the desire for that which is harmful to begin with. Can we start doing that? Because our mind goes straight away into, desire dropping I can't do. How did we drop the desire for childhood toys? We had to put effort. We rose above it. Because there is something else higher to hold on to. There was once this youngster who went to Swami Chinmayananda and he was sitting right in front and there was a satsang going on, informal question answer session. So this youngster, he asked Swamiji that, Swamiji, you were a graduate you have done your masters in English literature, you have done your graduation in arts, and then you became a lawyer, and then you also took up journalism. You were working with such a reputed firm, National Herald, and you were the editor in the editorial team for National Herald. So, why did you quit all this and become a sannyasi? So that youngster was typical, he was chewing bubble gum that time. So Gurudev looked at him and he said, my dear, when will you spit that gum? So he said, when there is no juice in it, I will spit it. He said, I chewed the word enough, there is no rasa in that, I spat it out. Very quick wit he had. What an answer he gave. Those who chew the world enough, what is there in this world? How much of bhoga? How much will we enjoy? Same pleasure again and again. No, it is. Even if some new pleasure comes, how long? It is temporary. Behind the temporary, how much of dependence is there? How much of struggle is there? Why not seek that which is permanent, which is within my own heart? So there is a saint called Meher Baba. He said a very nice thing. He said that a fast mind is a sick mind. A slow mind is a sound mind. And a still mind is a divine mind. So fast mind is a sick mind, meaning fast mind means the mind which is filled with so many desires, loaded. A fast mind is a sick mind. Slow mind is a sound mind. Reduce the desire, make the mind little more focused. Life comes into grip then. In a fast mind, the life is not in one's own grip. One always is a victim of life, victim of one's own desires. So fast mind is a sick mind. Slow mind is a sound mind. But a still mind is a divine mind. The mind which becomes quiet will realize its own nature as happiness, and I don't have to depend on anything outside. Hence here he says that Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, these people whose mind is very fast, they can't make the mind still. And the reason is desire. One desire is enough to create disturbance in the mind. So here he says that Bhoga Aishwarya Gatim Prati, if the end objective of my life, of all my pursuits is Bhoga and Aishwarya, desire fulfillment only will be the way. So one has to ask oneself that what is the end result that I seek? Of all that I am doing, what is the end result? Is it only some temporary fleeting pleasure that I seek? Some praise, some recognition, some power, some enjoyment. What else? So many years of hard work, education, getting a job, slogging it out there. One part is necessary. That is maybe our duty, that is maybe our journey in life. But is that the main thing? That enjoyment, comfort, conveniences. And how sad it is if you see today, don't we have comforts and conveniences which are much more than our parents and grandparents? But is our life happier? We are more miserable. Sitting amidst all comforts and conveniences, we cry. There is one tower which is coming up, I don't know which one it is. Biggest tower in some 120 floors. So make that tower, buy a flat in that and stay in that, and sitting on the topmost tower in Mumbai, viewing the whole thing, going through stress, tension, worry, weeping. What is the point? Nothing wrong with aspiring for that kind of a status or a standard of life, no problem. But what is the issue? Issue is that am I happy? And is that happiness found in Bhoga and Aishwarya? For some time that happiness is there, temporary. But then again one is seeking something else. So what is the end result? Is it only Bhoga and Aishwarya? Having born as a human being, if I am going to live only that way for enjoyment, what will I achieve? Is there a better possibility? So when in our culture it is said 4 Purusharthas, Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. Majority get stuck in 2 only, Artha and Kama. Few come to Dharma. And rare few people even seek Moksha. So that's why he says here, now the last verse about this, that Bhogaishvarya Prasaktanam Taya Pahrita Chetasam व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिः समाधौ न विधीयते. Says Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam, those who are extremely attached to enjoyment and fame, Taya Apahrita Chetasam, their mind is captured by only thoughts of enjoyment and fame. Vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau na vidhiyate. They are not able to focus and quieten the mind. Samadhi here is a stillness of the mind. The mind cannot become still, so they will never know their own nature as peace and happiness. They will always remain disturbed, agitated, always planning for more and more different types of enjoyments. And that is all, the whole life will go in that. So he says that if a person does not have a higher ideal to live for, this is one simple principle of life. That when there is nothing higher to hold on to in life, we will be caught up with petty, ordinary things of life. And small little things can create disturbance to us. Because there is nothing higher to hold on to. Even as a country, you will find that is the cause of the downfall. When everybody wanted freedom, everyone came together, freedom, 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 and we will work hard, and we will tolerate any type of himsa that is done to us, and we will bear it all, but we want freedom. One ideal, everyone came together. After that, gone. 65 years now. Selfish. Day by day going down, because no higher ideal. Who wants the country? Everybody wants their own autonomy. Each state wants its own progress. If given the chance, every state will break away. And we think that there is one India. There is no one India. Kashmir already gone. Now still if you go, they celebrate 15th August as the Black Day. They hoist a black flag. They don't even feel we are one with this country. Each state wanting its own separate power. So even as a country you will see, even in a company you will see. If the vision of the company is not inspiring, groupism will be there. Each department, each group will want to prove its own supremacy. Same thing in a family also. The vision of harmonious family is not there. I is more important. Bas. So the idea is that if there is nothing higher in life, very difficult to be selfless, to be inspired. One will be caught up in this one. And so having given this picture, now we will move on to the aspect of a karma yogi, that in contrast to this kind of a life where you have so much of potential but it just wasted, here is the life of a karma yogi. And how does a karma yogi live? And how that person prepares himself for samadhi, for stillness of the mind, and attains fulfillment in life. In contrast are the people who are overcome by desire. They become so restless that they cannot make their mind still. So they die unfulfilled, again to be born, again victim of desire. So this cycle continues. So what is Karma Yoga and what is the fulfillment of it? That we will continue in the session in July. So July session will be 22nd, 23rd and 24th. हाँ 20